Okay, good morning and welcome to this week's edition of NCompass Live. I am your host, Krista Burns, here at the Nebraska Library Commission. NCompass Live is the Library Commission's weekly online event where we cover any topics or activities that may be of interest to librarians. We do these sessions live every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m. Central Time. And they are recorded, so if you're unable to join us on Wednesday mornings, that's fine. We have our 4 years now worth of recordings.
We're in our fourth year. Wow.
All on our website, so you can go back and watch any of our previous sessions that we have held here. We do all sorts of things here. We do presentations and demos and bring in speakers and interviews. So it's a whole mixture of things that you can possibly learn about. Once a month, usually the last Wednesday of the month, we do Tech Talk, which is our Tech Talk with Michael Sauers, who is the Technology Innovation Librarian here at the Nebraska Library Commission.
Good morning.
Michael, he's here right next to me. So once a month he comes on and talks about techie stuff and usually has some sort of a speaker or interviewee or guest as he does today. So I'm going to hand over to Michael to take it away and do his techie stuff.
All right. Thanks, Krista. And welcome everybody back to Tech Talk. This month we have Jamie LaRue, the director of the Douglas County Libraries, on the line with us. Jamie, you're there?
I am. Thank you.
Yeah. And I've known Jamie for several years now. I was in Colorado before I came to Nebraska, and we met up, and I attended some workshops he did, and quite possibly vice versa. And Jamie has been doing some very, very interesting things around technology, eBooks specifically, which is I think where we'll mostly focus on now, and publicity with the library. And so we're going to kind of do a little bit of presentation and discussion kind of as we're going along here. We're going to play it a little loose. So Jamie, why don't you start out, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are, and then we'll go on from there.
Well, I've been the director of the Douglas County Library since 1990, so 22 years. When I got here in 1990, Douglas County was a pretty rural kind of a place. There were about 65,000 people in the entire county. We were a county department, and when I got here, we formed an independent library just as growth started to take off. From 1990 to 2000, we were the fastest growing counts. We went from 65,000 people to 100,000 people, and as an independent district we were able to grow right along with our community. So as we've gotten here in the past 3-4 years, things started to change about our collection. This kind of rising tide of concerns about eBooks, and spending my time on lately.
All right, great.
That's the real short version. Is that yeah?
No, that's wonderful. Just kind of giving us an idea of who you are and where you're coming from. Okay, so you've got this map up in front of us that everybody should be able to see right now, and so you've got from my count there 6 plus the Q&A area.
Right.
So we're focusing, I guess, mostly on eBooks here. Why don't you explain key 1 there, or issue 1, and
okay.
Kinda...
So just again to orient everybody, this program that I'm using is called XMind, a wonderful open source kind of mind or thinking tool. I use it for all kinds of stuff. And what I like about this as opposed to PowerPoint is you can kind of see how everything connects. I'll start at the 1 o'clock mark and kind of go around clockwise to all the other things. So first point here about the 2 key trends. Everybody knows that eBooks we just recently did a survey of about 44,000 of our patrons, and we found that at this moment in time, at this snapshot in history, 20% of our patrons would prefer to read ebooks. They have ebook readers at home. That roughly mirrors what we're seeing as the percentage of people that have ebook readers at home. The problem was at the end of last year, ebooks were only about 2% of our collection, and everything we had was checked out all the time, so it was about 2% of our circulation. Clearly there's a disconnect there. If 20% of your patrons are looking for something, it's only 2% of your collection and it's never available. So that's the first trend. And the second one is something that I think librarians have not been paying enough attention to. Back in 2004, I think there were only 29,000 self-published titles. By the end of 2010, there were 2.7 million. And so you say, man, that is the most amazing explosion of writing in the history of mankind. So the question is, so what's driving that? And I think it's two things. One of them is it's just way simpler to get published electronically. You can put something together. There are a number of vendors out there that will make this possible. But I think the more important one is the second point, which is that there's a fundamental shift in the economic proposition of publishing. I wrote a book called The New Inquisition. It was published by Libraries Unlimited, kind of a library publisher. They charged this price of $40 for this kind of professional piece, in exchange for which I got 10% of the sale. 10% of the sale is a pretty good contract, and even people like Eric Larson, that's what they get when they get 10%. Now, when you go to someplace like CreateSpace on Amazon, so this self-publishing platform, they ask you 4 questions. They say, what's the title of the book? Have you got an ISBN? Click here to upload your book. That's the 3 minutes that it takes to get published, and then it says you sell this for $9.99. You make $7 on the sale. So let's review. Do you sell something at $40 and make $4, or do you sell something at $10, which is going to move a lot faster, and make $7? So I think this fundamental shift means that self-publishing is going to slowly but surely displace a lot of the big commercial publishers. So that's probably a good time to stop and say, questions or comments about any of that?
As most people listening probably know, I'm a published author myself, and I can pretty much agree with the 10% and the price of the book. And my latest one is probably the shortest thing I've written, and I co-wrote it, and I think it's the second most expensive book you can buy that I've written. But but again, I was not involved in the pricing of the book.
Right.
And I agree with your simple economics that you're pointing there. I guess the question I would raise is the role of a publisher and the potential and the services they offer in exchange for that less money, as opposed to, and I'm severely overgeneralizing here, maybe the quality or lack thereof of most self-published content.
Well, let me tackle both of those issues in reverse order. First of all, I think most people thinking self-publishing must be, lousy content. But the truth of it is, there are lots of people who become self-publishers. It's not just all amateurs. There are a lot of folks that, like us, actually, where you've written a book before, you know how to go through that process. You understand that there needs to be copy editing. You understand that you're not a graphic designer. You understand that there are people that can do a much better job of marketing all you can. Publishers can certainly add value. On the other hand, 16 of the last 100 bestsellers were self-published. And so I think this means that a lot of the self-published people are becoming more professional. In this emerging change of the ecosystem, I think the bottom line is only really right. You got to have a writer and you got to have a reader. And everybody else who's in that distribution chain has to figure out some way to say, I'm worth the money and the time that you spend on me. So if a publisher says, I'm going to sit down and teach you how to write a book. I'm going to give you good structural editing and copy editing. I'm going to help you with the format of book design. I'm going to help you find a really good cover. I'm going to get people to write good blurbs for it. I'm going to help you sell this. All that stuff can be valuable. But I'll suggest that just like what happened with the music industry, where everybody was forced to go through this big music publisher or a book publisher, if you're only getting 10% at some point, are you sure you're getting 90% value out of that deal? And so I think in some ways the author is getting empowered at this moment in history to say, well, if I'm the content creator, how come I get such a small piece of the pie?
And that's a phenomenal question. We do have a question from the audience on this topic. Darme is asking, so what do you think the publishers are going to do about all the self-publishing? What becomes of publishers then?
Well, that's a really good question. I think it's something that they're deeply worried about. I think that they will do several things. Some of them will look like panic, where I've talked to some authors and they say their publishers, libraries are trying to rip them off, and there's all this terrible writing out there, and thank God they're part of this stable of high quality authors. Part of it is PR, right? Some of it will say, I'm sure they will watch successful self-publishing very carefully. And so we've already seen 2 examples of this. One of them is a woman's been marketing herself. She drives herself up to 500,000 sales. That's a bestseller by anybody's measure. A commercial publisher comes in and says, you know what, I will offer you a contract and I'll give you a little better than 10%, but I'll take on marketing. So I think they'll scoop up some of our independent writers that are successful. Excuse me. And I think the other side of this is that people will go the other way. There are some folks that have been very successful, and they say, you know what, I don't think I really need a publisher anymore. I've got a book cover on this, and I have friends, and I can pay somebody to do the copy editing, and if I'm going to get 90% of this, then that's a way deal. So I think we are in a period of chaos. Some publishers will be nimble. Some publishers will continue to produce fabulous books by wonderful authors that they set for them. Some publishers will go under, and some publishers will start to feature or highlight or make it easier for independent writers to come in under their umbrella.
Yeah, and I can think of some authors that have done both of those directions, and so yeah, that is definitely happening. And speaking of publishers going under, wasn't it Houghton Mifflin just filed for bankruptcy protection the other day?
Right. That's
so
right.
it is starting to happen. Okay, so what's number 2?
Okay. So here's the deal. To probably about 2009, 2010. That seemed to be the year that the iPad, the Kindle, and the Nook all took off, and everybody came back right after Christmas to say, we need eBooks, we need them right now. And most of us by that point had adopted the only game in town, right? It was Overdrive. And all of a sudden I realized when I was talking to my IT person, well, we've got some business problems here. A friend of mine had written a self-published book and wanted to donate it to us. We didn't have a way to accept it. So I said, okay, well, what do we have to do? Well, the answer is you have to kind of buy this server and kind of get into the business of providing books. Problem. When we went with Overdrive, without ever really talking about this, we gave up 3 things and maybe 4. We gave up ownership, as we found out when Joe Budden in Kansas was reviewing her contract and saw that the earlier version said that she had ownership. Most of us didn't even realize that we'd lost it. We went from buying books to renting books, just like what happened with databases. And then the second thing that didn't get near enough attention, I sat down one day and was looking at what is this book commercially and what are we paying for it, and discovered that again without any discussion about this, libraries had sacrificed our purchasing power. We spend a lot of money at Douglas County Libraries on books. For print, we get a 45% discount. Suddenly, we not only weren't getting a discount, we were paying more than consumers were paying for the same product. That is a serious erosion of our purchasing power. As I think I wrote in one of my articles, the publishers are so be careful that you guys aren't ripping us off. And I say, well, ripping you off. So we buy it in hardback, we buy it in paperback, we buy it in large print, we buy it as a downloadable audio file. We've bought 4 products and there's only 1 title there. And I think as you look at that, it's not sustainable. We can't keep doing that, particularly when there's that tremendous rise of independent publishing and self-publishing that represents a whole new channel of content that we haven't even talked about. Third one is, and this bothered me a lot, I was trying to demonstrate to one of my board members how to get signed up with Overdrive. To get your very first book from Overdrive, it took 23 clicks. That's a long time. It was a lousy kind of an interface. It was awkward to work with. And I think that the way we spend a lot of time trying to design our catalogs and the user experience for looking for something within our system. But if you find an ebook and click on that Drive or 3M or anybody else, suddenly everything works different. And that's an awkward, confusing thing. And then finally, I'll just toss this out, is that I don't know how standard this is, but my library makes a fair amount of money from library book sales. We weed our collection, we pull things out, they're not useful to us, we put them in a book sale, we give them away to churches, we put them in charter schools. That whole flushing of a only slightly used collection out into the community is a powerful source for the promotion of literacy. There are no e-books, and so we can't sell the things we buy anymore. There's some loss of revenue there. I think also we lose money on fines, right? E-books don't generate fines, they just come due and come back. So I'll stop there. Is that all pretty clear? I think these are real business problems that, when we give up ownership, that means if we leave a vendor, we leave our collection behind. This pricing model. Go ahead.
Yeah, when you said loss of revenue, I wrote down overdue fees, because in our e-reader classes, we talked about kind of the pluses and negatives of ebooks, and we kind of, they check themselves back in automatically so you don't lose anything, but then a patron can't decide to keep it an extra day and pay the fine because they need to finish the book. And some libraries really rely on that income from fees. So let me kind of ask you really one of these big questions. Libraries have traditionally basically operated off of what's known as the first sale doctrine. You buy a physical item, you get to do whatever the heck you want with it.
That's right.
With digital content and licensing and DRM being illegal to break for pretty much any reason, are you kind of seeing the death of the first sale doctrine and how libraries have traditionally operated?
Well, and that's you put your the issue here, is that for the past 50 years, operating under that first sale doctrine, and you got it, first owner, you work out any deal you want, and then it's yours. You can give it to somebody, you can sell it to somebody, it's yours. The attempt on the part of the publishing industry here is to say they want to change ownership into leasing, change first sale doctrine into a database licensing model. They believe that that kind of metered access to a book, again, a lot like a database thing. If you got a subscription, you have access to content. You don't have a subscription, you lose it. Obviously, the revenue stream is a lot stronger that way. But one of the things I'll talk about ownership, I had this powerful experience when I was a kid. When my granddad died, he left a series of books to me. It changed my life. It really, of these books, building your own library is a powerful investment in your whole life. And now with an ebook, if you just have a subscription, when you die, your library dies. And I think that's something that's worth talking about. It's worth stopping and thinking about.
The other issue I think I can raise here was I was at the Massachusetts Library Association conference about a month ago, and there were representatives from 2 of the big 6 publishers in the room. And they were kind of having a panel discussion about the future of books and publishing. And it was kind of interesting because once you get 2 people from 2 different publishers in the same room, there's certain things they can't say due to antitrust law. But they kept talking about buying the book when it came to electronic. When we got to the Q&A, I had gotten so frustrated, I stood up and kind of verbally took them to task saying, we're not buying this content, we are leasing this content. You are licensing this content to us. Yeah. Well, I then got a very interesting response from one of the publishers, and I'll say it was Random House because this has already been made public. She said to me, as far as Random House is concerned, if we sell you the book, you own it.
That's true. Random House has kind of made a point of in the market. On the other hand, Random House has also announced without any prep at all that they were increasing the price of a new ebook by 300%. So if you want to buy the latest Danielle Steele, it costs you $84. That's the cost of ownership. Yeah.
Well, the follow-up, part of the follow-up conversation I had with her was that, and this is where I wish I had a bit of the mind to continue the conversation significantly. She said, you own it, and as far as they're concerned, you can move it from platform to platform or do what you want with it. But she added something along the lines of, providing that other platform applies the same sort of DRM that is the minimal requirement to make sure certain things can't happen with the content. And I guess my later thought on that was, isn't that like saying you can buy this car, but you're only allowed to drive it on certain roads? Is that really owning the car?
Right. I think, well, and that's a really good point. I think it's more like saying I'm selling you a car, but you can only have it serviced at, the approved outlets that we have identified, and if you do anything else, you void your warranty, and we might sue you. So is it ownership? That's a good question. The part that fascinated me about what happened in Kansas. So they bought a bunch of books, and it was Overdrive. It was not the publisher. It was Overdrive who put in this thing that said, you can transfer it to another provider with the approval of the publisher. And I think they said, okay, we're going to move these things from Overdrive over to another platform. Mind if we do this? A lot of the publishers said, well, gee, I thought we already sold this to you. And so this idea about a distributor coming in and placing new restrictions on the market, or publishers placing new restrictions on the market when it's all very unclear, these things really do constitute business problems. To pay a lot more attention to them than we have.
Yeah, very good point. Sometimes we need to be a little more clear, and we'll definitely come back to this based on a blog post you wrote recently. But sometimes we need to be clear about when we are complaining about something, we're complaining in the right direction. It may be the publisher, it may be whatever the platform distributor is, it may be both, it may be neither.
Well, that's right, and that kind of moves to my next point, is that I think the other problem, us as librarians, and part of it is, there are things that we do need to be talking about. We do need to call out the fact that this change in business terms without any consultation with us isn't something we're happy about. But there's a difference between being an eeyore, just kind of complaining bitterly and often, oh my God, we are such victims. Talk with nothing but librarians, and what I say here is I say out west, no cattle. That's people complaining, and we sent some people to the BEA conference recently because we're out there actively trying to solicit new publishers. And one of the sessions that happened at that conference, librarians were saying, okay, working with libraries, and a lot of publishers showed up. They said, okay, well, what do we have to do? What are your concerns? And they listened to librarians complain bitterly and often. And there was no proposal there to make things better. And so I want to make it clear that although I think we have to pay attention, we have to be intelligent business people about it, and we do have to let the public know that when they say things to us like, I don't know if you're aware of this, but this book is very popular and you haven't purchased the ebook. They don't know that we can't buy it at all. They don't know that it's produced by, Macmillan or Simon & Schuster, and it's not available to any terms. And so we do have to communicate with the public. But I think it's important that as we, get in the market, that we apply market to this market problem, and that we're intelligent, and when we talk about these things in public, that what we're trying to do is to make things better. We're not just kvetching about them. So to kind of go into this, if we don't like the price, we have some options. So I had this conversation with somebody from Mr. And I said, you know what, we've set aside, because we really want to grow our digital branch, we've set aside $250,000. I'll spend it with you today. And they said no. And so then I turn around and I'm talking to somebody at Smashwords, that is an independent, they kind of an e-publishing platform for self-published authors. And I say, we have $250,000. Do you want it? He says, oh yeah, boy, I tell you what, you can have everything we own to our secure FTP site, take what you want, and bill yourself. Who should I deal with, huh? Should I deal with somebody who may or won't sell to me at a fair price, or should I deal with somebody who's eager to sell to the library because they haven't sold to the library before? Right now, what's happening for most libraries is that if you're doing any purchasing of e-content at all, it's probably not because you have a new source taking money away from print and you're rolling it over to eBooks. Well, we're redirecting those from our budget from print at this markup. We're losing money. We're seeing an erosion of purchasing power. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So if instead, let's say that I say, okay, well, Simon & Schuster, I'll keep buying your book, I'll keep buying your hardback, your softback, your large print, your audiobook, but I guess I can't buy the ebook, so I'm going to form a new relationship with a new vendor. And they're eager to work with us. Maybe they haven't gotten a lot of publicity. Maybe not a lot of people are asking for that book this year. But you know what? They're going to ask for it next year. And next year, I'm going to spend more money with the people who want to work with me. And I think that's a much smarter thing than just complaining, is put your money where we are finding responsive partners. So let's grow a new market. When I was trying to sell this to my board, they were saying, okay, so we're getting into some new territory here. We're working with publishers that haven't been in libraries. Isn't there kind of a risk? I said, well, sure, we can buy stuff that people won't use or won't like. It's true now. Just because we buy something from the Big Six doesn't mean it's popular, right? There's a lot of stuff that nobody ever checks out. And I think there is a risk of doing nothing. If we're not careful, we could find ourselves giving another 20% of our book budget to ebooks with all of those new restrictions. I worry about the deterioration of purchasing power, and I think if we're not very careful, if we just have to do what everybody tells us, if they redefine these terms of, we become irrelevant. People don't come to the library because we can't afford to have the things that they used to get from us. So I think we need to reposition ourselves from this end of the distribution chain, where we're just the last stop, to being a partner with publishing, to being able to do this independent. You don't have a huge marketing budget, but people come to the library to find books. We can help them find you. And we can do things that I'll talk about in a minute to have a share in some of the sale of this. We can help you be successful. And then not only partners in publishing, we can team up with authors to help become content creators, where we become the publisher. And so I think finally what I'm seeing in how the market is changing is that instead of just spending 90% of our money like we do now on nothing but commercial mainstream publishing, we have to split up our budgets into 4 categories. The large commercial, people are still going to ask for them, and we're going to have to spend some money on them. The independents and the middle list publishers, people that are, good publishers, but they're just not as big as the Big Six, they're growing their offerings by a lot. As of the end of last year, about titles from these independent presses as opposed to 300,000 from the commercial. So there's some good stuff there. A lot of it's of great regional interest. And then local history. I was looking at something my staff did last week. They've been taking these historic photographs of one corner of a town. And so they're geo-coded and they're time-coded. We can build like these little animated slideshows that show the history of a town through photographs contributed by our local community. A potential new source of publishing, a new channel that Google's never going to do it, Amazon's never going to do it, only we can do it. So a channel of local history is, I think, part of the future of libraries. And then finally, the self-published stuff. I think they've been doing some focus groups here with local authors, and I was saying, okay, well, suppose there's a button on our website that says, so you want to write a book? And everybody clicks it and says, do you want to write a good one? And we help them get in touch with good editors, and we help them get in writing groups so that they can critique each other's works, and we help them find copy editors, and we help them find books. And we become the publisher, and we say, now the library is the place that did this, and you get 90% and we get 10%. And so when I talked to a lot of these local authors, they said, you know what, I'll give you my book. I'll give you at least one copy of my book because A, I want people to, and B, I think you can help me sell it. So that's a profound shift. Let's not just look at the issues of the Big Six. Let's remember that we are in the most time in the history of publishing, and we need to get in the game. Good place to stop for questions or comments?
Sure. Okay. I'm going to make it back up to point number 3 for a minute, just because I want to read this out loud and have you get a little more specific about it.
Yes.
You mentioned on your slide for number 3 there, the all hat, no cattle, and you wrote a blog post called All Hat, No Cattle, which I love, by the way. I'm not sure I ever heard it in Colorado, but I get it. And I'm just going to read the first couple of sentences here, and I want you to expand on this a little bit, because when I read this, I loved it. In too many venues, particularly around the issue of ebooks and publishers, librarians are doing a lot of whining lately. Mostly it's to each other. We tell ourselves how important we are, while at the same time complaining that too few other people, big publishers, funding authorities, the media, the public, seem to agree with us. Such behavior is unattractive and unprofessional. Moreover, it distracts us from the important work that needs to be done.
Right.
And by the way, we'll link to all of these articles and things in the show notes for those watching live. Okay, what drove you to write that? So this is a very long blog post, but obviously something just kind of tweaked you a bit to say, I got to say something.
Yeah, it goes back to that BE, where, again, some publishers were coming in saying, I've got concerns, but I want to tell you what my concerns are. Do you have some solutions for me? Do you have some way that we can team up? Maybe everything isn't different, but could I hear some flexible scenario planning that would help us figure out a way to work together? And instead, librarians were whining to each other, oh, well, we're not, people keep making things more expensive. Or, gee, it wasn't fair that you make us buy something again after 26 uses. Okay, not a bad starting point, but just whining about it doesn't move it forward. And I think at some point, and I think I've probably have this over on another slide here about what's missing. What I'm say offsetting new restrictions with new rights. So if a publisher says, okay, as was the case with Penguin, we're going to start selling to libraries again through a 3M secure server, but we're going to give it to you 6 months late. Well, there's some libraries that say 6 months late. Oh, whoa, that's so mean. Well, why not instead just turn around and say, okay, well, great, thank you so much for selling to us, but it's 6 months after the introduction to the market. It's not as valuable. We're going to need a 60% discount with that. And so that kind of conversation is very different than just whining. It's saying, okay, we see that you're trying something here, but we can't just accept new restrictions. We have to have some new rights too. Or in the case with HarperCollins, okay, you got to buy it again after 26. Well, if I have to buy it again, it wasn't a purchase, it was a rental. And I buy a lot of books now where I'm spending money with a publisher that looks good, it was well reviewed, and nobody liked it. So if that's the case, I still bought the whole book. If I'm rent a book that's successful, then I should be able to rent a book that's not successful. So if it only went out once, then I should only have to pay 70 cents for it, not pay for that the full retail value. So I think that's what I mean about there's important work to be done. I understand that everything isn't clear about publishers, that they have real concerns, they want to figure out things, but we have to be willing to experiment. Is that clear?
Oh, yeah. Yep, that helps. Back to the kind of becoming the publisher. Last month, this is more of a comment, maybe you can respond to than anything else. We interviewed the folks, and the library name is escaping me completely, but Chris is going to look it up while I'm vamping here. ePublish.
Chesapeake Central Library. Yep,
they're doing a program called ePublish or Bust, which in their case it's a patron and a librarian trying to figure out basically how to self-publish. Are you aware of other libraries doing this, or are you doing the self-publish? Are you doing the self-publishing part yet?
I'm kind of working on a task force here, and in 2013 we will be launching a whole channel of local self-published authors. But yeah, there's some fascinating stuff out there. We definitely are not first. The one that I think that's gotten the biggest attention around the country has been U-Media, Chicago. Oh. And what they did was they set aside, and obviously a big library, but they set aside 5,200 square feet for the space that they remodeled. So at 3:30, all the kids come in after school, and there might be a lecture about how to create digital media files. So a little bit of a program there. But then they have high-end equipment right there. So the kids then go in, they write a song, they create it on the spot using library equipment, upload it to YouTube, and it's branded with From You Media at the Chicago Public Library. And so they're teaching kids how to be content creators. In this case, it could be music, it could be, digital graphic files. It could also be a book. Topeka, Kansas, put together this kind of community novel writing thing, which I thought was brilliant. What's the thing that they do, the National Write a Novel Month,
Nairo,
Yeah,
Miro,
something
something like that, yeah.
Right, what you said. So what they were 3 professional writers to write the first 3 chapters, and then they let it go to the community, and everybody takes turns writing the next one. Well, that's just fascinating, isn't it? And I think it raises all these things where if you say, suppose I opened everything up to all these local authors, there's going to be some really new and interesting problems. One of them is there are no reviews for these. No what to buy. Do I accept everything? And so one of the things we're playing with is this idea, suppose I ask everyone who reads more than 100 books a year, and there are a lot of them. And I say to them, help. There's no way we can track all these things. We're going to start sending you these ebooks that are locally authored. We want you to write a review. We want you to rank it out there. We want you to help us figure out what's successful. And then at the end of the year, we go back and we say, okay, books to people. We have a recommendation engine in our catalog. We have people writing reviews. We're talking to our community about what's the worth and value of these items. What do you actually like, and what don't we even want to pay for? And at the end of the year, we throw away everything that was given to us that we didn't want, and we pay for the things that our community liked. We could outsource collection development in a way that completely turns our gatekeeping role on its head. It really gets us involved in a lot of important conversations with our community about the creation of literature. I think that's pretty cool.
Great. Okay, now I'm gonna plan to play my role as I'm from Nebraska, and you all of this sounds great. I mean, it really does. I mean, I've been trying to follow it as much as I can on my own. But you start talking about budgets of $250,000, and my brain goes to we've got so many libraries out here, and I know Colorado does too, where they'd love to have an annual budget of $250,000 for everything, let alone some book purchasing. Right. How does this scale down, I guess, is the question, as opposed to up?
Right. Well, and I've kind of skipped over something I don't want to completely ignore about kind of what our model are. But we've put together this model as kind of a test case to say, okay, we know we have a little more tech savvy and money than some other libraries. So how do you spread the model? Well, here's what we've done. So currently we have 800 publishers we've done. We have 7,000 e-titles we've added. And then we teamed up with some other libraries in Colorado. You may remember there's a consortium called Marmot. There's another library independent called Anythink. And I said, okay, we could invest this money in this experiment. How do we? So for us, $100,000 of development and 13 months of time. But offering this to Marmot, which has 68 libraries all the way down to very small one-person libraries, we can offer it to that consortium for $3,000 or $6,000. Not bad for second generation. And so a consortium, by teaming up to have a shared ebook platform, can make it available to a much larger area. You've probably seen that in Wake County and Khalifa, which is in Orange County. There's a number of places that have teamed up to say, okay, there are 22 libraries here, there are 68 libraries here, there's 230 libraries here. We'll share a server. The most tech-savvy one does it, and then you just share it with all the libraries that want to be part of it. Smashwords is one of the new independent publishing platforms that accepts self-publishers. We're working with them, very eager to work with libraries. They announced a deal to sell 30,000 titles to Khalifa today. I'm trying to negotiate to buy 100,000 from them. Biblioteca is one of the new vendors that came out. They liked our model so much. They said, what do we do for smaller libraries? Well, gee, we come to smaller libraries and say, let's be a more library-friendly Overdrive. Let's give you ownership. Let's give you discounts. Let's integrate all this stuff holdings, but make it available so that you don't have to grow your own. So I think what's happening is both libraries are stepping up in a consortial arrangement to make this option available to smaller libraries at a cost they can afford, and some vendors seem to be getting this idea that ownership and discounts are absolutely essential if publishers want libraries to buy their works.
Let me just throw in a question here. So you're finding that the publishers you're working with are friendly to consortial groups?
The ones that we have identified really are, because again, most of these folks are eager to work with libraries. There are some things, like the Big Six say some things, and I think it's still partly an education question. They say, well, I don't want to allow interlibrary loan because I don't want to give you a book that you can then give to the whole world. And I say, okay, so you don't want to sell to a consortium that has 18 members, but you sell to a library that has 35 branches? What's the difference? And if libraries are buying copies and we're limiting the use to only one person at a time, just like we do with print, well, then we're going to buy, it's not like we have one copy that we give to the world to simultaneous use. It's only one person at a time. I have trouble keeping up with the demand within my county. I certainly can't keep up with the demand for the whole world. So people get libraries I'm willing to loan it to, the more copies I have, the more exposure they get, and the more money they make.
Okay, great. So let's. I think this kind of fits in here. So what actually are you setting up? I mean, I've heard this bit before. I've seen the diagrams, but what is the technology involved here that you're actually implementing?
Okay. Well, first let me give you the principles. Go to the hardware. The principles are: we buy it at discount, so we own it. We get a copy of it. We limit it to one user at a time. If I have 4 people waiting for something, I buy another copy. There's obviously an upper limit there, but most things don't reach it. So this is just like print model. We integrate it. We manage our own content. We don't bounce it out to somewhere else. And then we have established, working with a lawyer, this common understanding document. I don't want to write a long contract publisher because they all want slightly different things, and how am I supposed to remember who wants what? So we just wrote this: if you do business with us, this is how we operate. It's a common understanding, and we encourage every library to just adopt that so you don't have to spend money on the contracts either. And then we have this deal where we click to buy. So I put a link in our catalog to say there are 3 statuses. It's available, click here to read it. It's not available, click here to put a wait for it. I want to click here and buy it. But if somebody does that and we send it to, a vendor, we send them to Barnes & Noble, we send them to a local independent bookstore, we get a share of the sale. And that helps us to recover some of that lost revenue that I talked about. So these are the principles that govern this. And I think, I really didn't put the tech diagram here, but I'll show you what this looks like. This will be live.
Well, while you're pulling it up,
at the top.
And we have linked to the an ALA TechSource article that has that diagram in it too. But okay. I had a question about the click to purchase, which I am very intrigued by. So in this model, you'll be doing that with the electronic. Why wouldn't you, shouldn't you, couldn't you, or have you done that for the books in your print collection?
We have done it for every item in our catalog. If we have a way for the patron to buy it, we put a link to it.
Okay.
And I looked at this as a say, and we first started talking about this, people said, gee, this looks a little crass and commercial. And I said, no, I don't see it that way. We are helping our local economy. We link to a local independent bookstore. That's one of the choices. So we're sending business their way. And I think that sometimes, if you come online, gee, I really want a book, and there are 160 holds on it. Well, can it be easier in the name of customer convenience for somebody to go off and find it somewhere else, get a little bit faster. So absolutely, I think that we should have a link from every single thing in our catalog. The quick tech overview.
Okay, well, real quick, let me follow up a further question from that. You're a district, so I'm assuming short of board approval to insert that by was not a problem.
That's correct.
I am anticipating, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure also that it's going to vary from locality to locality, but a city library where now you're a government entity where there might be rules about selling stuff, making money off of it, endorsing a particular vendor, that sort of thing. Are you aware of any examples of that sort of issue being a problem anywhere?
Sure, and I'll tell you the best solution that I've kind of seen for this. I think that the deal is that so if you go out and you find an independent bookstore or just a bookstore in your area, and you bring that person first to your board, and you say, we want to team up to promote literacy together. We think that people reading more is good, whether they check things out at the library, whether we buy. We don't think we're in competition with each other. We think we're actually a partner with them. And then you say, okay, we want to put this link in our catalog, so we're sending things off. It's a customer convenience, a patron, a way to encourage them to read more, a way to support some local business. And then you can cut it so you can slice a deal to say our affiliate status, our partnership program with the independent bookstore, is that when we send them all this stuff, they write a check to our foundation, to our friends. That money goes back to help us buy more books. And I think when I explain it like that, council people look at this and say, okay, well, you're not stealing money. In fact, you're directing traffic to local vendors. You're helping us to grow our sales stats. That's a good deal. And then you say, no, we're not doing any tax collection for sales tax stuff. The company still does that. And then they write us a check. Sorry, I've got pop-ups there. So the money comes in then to a friends group, so we're actually creating some money for them. Then you've got some support by your community, and we're buying more books, which is what everybody wants. So I think, again, being creative about this, teaming up with people, partnering with people, is a good way. You can find ways around these obstacles.
And the moment you said friends or foundations, I just said, and that, I think, just kind of solved all of my brain powers. Now you still need to have a local bookstore and, a friends or foundation group, but not insurmountable. So.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so the tech. Let's throw that in here a little bit.
Okay, there's 4 basic pieces, and again, we spent a lot of money on a programmer to start with an open source product called ViewFind. You can find it at viewfind.org. It's a library discovery layer. It's like the front end to a catalog. So put money into this code, and we're giving the code back to the world. So I'll eventually get around to where you go online and find all this stuff. But if you wanted to take this code and put it on your own server, we've done the work, given it to the library community. It's free. Take it, fix it, share it. The Adobe Content Server is the piece that the publishers need to say, we trust the server. Right now, it's the only game in town. There's some talk about changing the standards to come up with another scheme. One, just for Adobe Content Server for us, $10,000. So that's the deal where you got to team up probably to buy it from libraries. But after that, it's $1,500 a year, which again, shared cost is pretty cheap. And then Adobe charges you 8 cents per checkout. So if I have a book and I attach digital rights management, which is what Adobe Content Server does, and I check out a book to you for 3 weeks, it manages that whole process. Adobe Content Server is what Overdrive uses, it's what Biblioteca uses, it is just the industry standard solution. But the MySQL server is something else we've added into the mix, because if I have a Gutenberg title, or I have a self-published book where someone says, you know what, I don't want DRM on it, make it a Creative Commons, I want as many people to read it as possible, then I don't want to spend 8 cents per checkout for Adobe content. So I put it under MySQL server, which is free. We still deliver it through ViewFind, and so now I can deal both with commercial content and with free content. And then finally there's the ILF, so we can put this front end up. So if you go to our catalog and you search for autism, you get every book we've got, because Viewfind indexes everything in our catalog. You get every ebook we've got. You get every meeting we have going on in the library that day about autism. It integrates all of this content into one user experience. That's the very high-level overview of the platform.
All right. Okay, we've got a question from the audience, which is kind of a larger issue. We'll get to in a second. I've got a question that I've just been dying to find an answer to. Why does Adobe get 8 cents per transaction? Where does that fit in here?
Their business model, everybody's trying to figure out a way to make money on ebooks, right? And so they said, well, we'll give you the platform to deliver it, and we'll make kind of the metering the use. So it's like the license fee for a Microsoft operating system. It's like people give away the razor so that they make money on the blades. So this is a transaction fee. And at first I was kind of huffy about that, but I thought, how much does it cost you to put a book back on the shelf when somebody returns it now? The labor involved in that is probably greater than 8 cents. I don't have to shelve this book. I don't have to send an overdue notice. I try to collect fines. 8 cents per transaction is cheap enough, but it's affordable. And so particularly if I can get a 45% discount on a book from a publisher, I'm saving money on this deal.
Sure. Yeah, I was commenting less on the amount more than its existence. So the DRM is still being handled by your servers. You're not like every time there's a checkout, it's not pinging some machine at Adobe. They've just kind of use this term loosely, arbitrarily decided that to use our software, we're going to charge you this transaction fee.
And as I say, that's how they make their money. They don't make the money on the sale of the server. They make their money on the transaction fee.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Yeah, that was just one of those questions I was trying to find an answer to, and I couldn't. Okay, so we have a question from Ryan, who's actually at the Chesapeake Library in Virginia. And his question was more about staffing. It says, how much has staffing changed at your library since the new role/responsibility with eBooks?
I think that the biggest hit that we've taken has fallen first in the IT department, trying to figure out how to coordinate all these pieces. But most of that was kind of contract labor that we hired out as opposed to trying to do it all in-house. But it certainly took a lot of time from our IT director. She put a lot of her time into it. I think what we have begun to see is that most of the work now is falling on the collection development people. One of the big problems, and I think I had this under one of my other slides, is that under this other issues down here, we have sacrificed our relationships with publishers. Most libraries really don't deal with publishers anymore. We deal with distributors. So, the obvious advantage to dealing with Baker and Taylor or Ingram is that there's just one-stop shopping. They have a nice, clean acquisition interface. You only have to write one check. You have one vendor. When we were trying to go directly to all these publishers, there are a lot of them, and there's a lot of hand-holding. How do I find out what you own? Where can I get copies of your book covers? Are there any reviews? What's the ordering system? I need to receive the book. I need to receive, the file. I need to receive metadata for it. I need a book cover. Helping people walk through all those things. We are at the very beginning of a revolution in acquisitions and cataloging, processing e-content. So I think that the next big thing we're working on is to put together our own acquisition system. We're outsourcing that. We're, or I should say, contracting for. We'll spend some money on it, and I'm going to set this up so it's multi-user, so that the next library to come along doesn't have to recreate all this work. They can just come in and buy a seat on our acquisition system and share in the proportionate cost of maintaining it. So I think the staff pressures. We have placed on, you see up here under collaborative, I've got a site, evoke.cvlsites.org. All of the work can be found there. So a copy of the common understanding that we paid the lawyer to do, use it. The link to all this software that we created, it's free, come and grab it. We just finished putting together metadata processing guidelines. How do you take an Onyx file or a file that comes made up the MARC standard and create a good cataloging record out of it. We've figured these things out. We hope other people will contribute to us. We have a list of every publisher that we've already contacted. We encourage you to reach out and contact them too. So we're putting a lot of time into this because we think this is a strategic investment of our time. But there's no reason why every other library should have to work this hard.
We are approaching.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that did great. We are approaching the hour, but Jamie, can we keep you on the line a little longer here to do more questions and stuff?
You bet.
All right. Darmay is asking, and I think it kind of you said the magic word MARC record in there. I think ties into her question. Her question is, how does the information about the ebooks get into the ILS search? Is it actually loaded there, or does ViewFind search both somehow? How does that all fit together?
ViewFind basically is an index and discovery tool. It can index MARC records just fine. The issue is when you talk to a publisher, you say, okay, give me metadata. And you have to have that whole discussion. They say, well, you want a what? You want a MARC record? What the heck is that? And so you say, well, it's really nothing more than a description of the book. It's metadata. And so many publishers do understand that they have to provide something like that to any retailer. So it's that part new. And so what we've tried to figure out is there a way for me to take this kind of fixed field information? You send me a description. Here's the author, here's the title, here's the BISAC, because that's what a bookstore is going to be using. They're used to that. And then we have various means to what's called crosswalk from one format, often like just an Excel spreadsheet, and walk that over to something that we can load into a MARC file and that ViewFind can index. So again, that metadata processing guidelines has more information about that if you're curious about the cataloging piece.
Great, and yeah, I definitely don't want to turn this into a metadata session.
That's good because you just hit the limit of my understanding.
Okay, perfect. All right, I think we're at the same level. All right, let me ask kind of a larger scale question, which I think you can easily comment on. There was a Pew study recently about ebooks, and I think it was something like somewhere around 20% of our patrons know we even have ebooks. And
right.
Then
20% of the patrons with ebook readers.
Right.
No.
Yes. And then Dan Neiman, who's a librarian up at South Sioux City here in Nebraska, who I believe is actually on. So yes, Dan, if you want to chime in on this, I did warn him I was going to use his blog post. He linked to a Forbes article kind of explaining what the issues are with ebooks, and he said maybe if enough people finally report on the issue, our patrons will finally realize that we have ebooks in libraries. This is a very loaded question, but do we as librarians really suck at promoting this?
Michael, there are many, many people who are astonished to find out that we have DVDs.
Okay, fair enough.
You know?
Well, okay, but still, I guess then my question stands. Maybe it's a larger issue, not just ebooks. What aren't we doing that people don't know we have this, or what are we doing and why isn't it working?
Well, there's quite a lot. I think that our problem is, as a profession, we are not very good at marketing. And I think that the issue is we open up our doors and we think everybody who comes to us understands everything about us. And so we don't do this kind of outreach to people to say, let's put this much larger frame. Across the United States, the general percentage of people that use libraries falls somewhere between 35 and 50%. It isn't surprising that half of the population doesn't know anything about us. So the American Library Association, to its credit, has really been trying to step up kind of national media coverage. They've done a good job of getting in, some of the big city newspapers and just trying to get the word out about some of the services that we're doing. But it is absolutely the case that if we want to be players in the 21st century, we need to put together some, punchy, short, not library jargon kind of stuff that we are getting out and, cultivating relationships with the media, appearing on webinars that are not just for librarians, but are for the average reader, or that calling into talk shows to say, did you know that we have these things? And I think if we don't step up and get far more engaged in our communities, then of course nothing will change. we have our own behavior. It's not going to, someone else isn't going to do it for us.
Yeah, Dan kind of clarified and echoes pretty much what you just said. He wrote, our reporting needs to get out of the technology section of blogs to primetime television, news, and entertainment. So, you know, we need to, as I was talking about this issue with Krista, is we need to get the word out, not just to each other and not just to our patrons, but the people who aren't our patrons. And I know you've talked about that in the past, about reaching the people who you don't have to necessarily convince the people who've already come in the door. You need to convince the people who've never come in the door.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that, you know, just to go back to this idea about messaging, is that I see over and over what librarians do is they sit down, they love the brainstorming piece. Well, they need to send this message and this message and this message and this message. And I keep saying, no, pick 4 and sell them for 5 years, over and over and over, because that's how an image gets out there into the community. The great news is the general community that libraries are about books. Everybody knows that. And we've been very consistent about presenting that to the public. What we haven't done is we've kind of sold things in a lot of different ways, and I think if we just pick 3, 4 things and keep hitting them, like around the ebook things, is that, you know, we have the content of our culture. We have, you know, everything from music and new kinds of writing. We are the place to come to discover the storytelling of our nation. You know, there are lots of ways to kind of narrow things down and just start repeating it over and over, which is how things happen.
Well, and we're going to wrap this up. I kind of want to give you from that a chance to kind of plug one of your other projects. And if you have any other questions in the audience, folks, just get those sent in. We'll be wrapping up shortly here. But I know you have another project blog, excuse me, called BHAG.
Yeah.
What is BHAG? Give us the elevator pitch here for what that is and why we should care.
BHAG, the basic idea is that over the past 15 years, libraries are losing funding even as our use was going up. And so we have to do something. Just doing the stuff that we have been doing will not work. We're going to regain some mind share. And so the idea was, instead of trying to train each librarian to be a speaker and advocate, what we suggest is there's a script on that BHAG site that tells you how to give a 12-minute talk, but not a librarian. What you do is you say, find somebody who's already a good speaker in your community. Find somebody that has these connections, that is believed, is trustworthy, and say, would you be willing to go out and give 5 talks in the community? Here's a copy of the script. It takes 12 minutes. If all of us do this, if all of us learn how to tell a library story and hit the same 4 points over and over across the nation, we can build a culture of support. Here's the thing I like about it. This doesn't cost anything. All you have to do is to reach out enough into your community to find a good speaker, to find 5 places for the talk to give, and just keep repeating this. Very easy to do, very powerful. The folks we've signed up to do this defeated some attempts to roll back taxes that they've wound up getting more money from, because this is based on the psychology of persuasion. How do you teach people to change their mind? Answer, you give a story. You tell them just a little bit of information so they know that you're not making it up. And then finally, you give them a short, memorable tagline. Libraries change lives. Libraries mean business. Libraries are a smart. Libraries build community. Those 4 things, over and over and over.
And what does BHAG stand for?
Big, hairy, audacious goal.
All right, I like it.
The idea is,
Yes.
I like it.
All we want to do is to change everybody's mind. How hard could it be?
Yeah, of course. Well, you know, and that made me think of one other thing, and I think we're going to try to get some of the folks that were involved in this on a future episode. But the book burning party in Troy, New York. Are you aware of that one?
Yeah.
I think that was wonderful. That was very creative to say the least. So. I'm not seeing any other questions from the audience. Krista, do you have anything outstanding there? Nothing coming through on the Twitter or anything?
Sorry.
No? Okay, that's fine. She's doing it.
And actually,
Go ahead.
Michael, before you go, can I get a little quick feedback about this? What do people think about this mind map walking through things? Has it been easy to follow, easier than PowerPoint? Can I get any kind of about that?
I'll give you my feedback. I liked it, and it wasn't Prezi, so I didn't get dizzy.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just a little different. And I've used similar software before myself to kind of not for a presentation, but to kind of organize thoughts. I'm not sure it really clicked with me, but I see the use of it definitely.
Okay.
You know, you need to give people a chance to type too.
Anybody on the line who has any comments or anything about what Jamie used here, let us know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be very curious.
Yeah, as a reminder, we pretty much bookmarked everything. Okay, we got, let's see, Dan said, I liked it. Darmay says, my map is interesting and organized. Thanks for all the information. So it looks like it's went over pretty well.
Okay, well, thanks.
Well, Jamie, I want to thank you very much for this. This is, I expected it to go well. Every time I talk to Jamie, I come out much more informed and enjoy it. And do you still do your workshop on how to become a library district?
I sure do.
All right. Yeah. If I'm going to plug Jamie because I've been to that workshop. If you are ever considering becoming a library district, you want Jamie to come talk to you. It will be a very informative day. Actually, multiple days, or was it one day? I'm trying to remember.
I think we did. I think it was like a 4-hour session.
Okay. Yeah, but big giant notebook full of stuff too. So
that's it.
All right. Well, thank you, Jamie. We're going to go ahead and mute you here for a minute. We're going to kind of do some wrap up here and take presentation back. So let's see how smoothly we can do this.
Why don't you let him say thank you for having me?
Show a screen. Yes. Okay. So just as a reminder, we have been we bookmarked a lot of things in advance that we knew we were going to talk about, and then as Jamie pulled up things, mentioned other websites, Krista has been frantically finding them and bookmarking them for you. So those will all be posted.
I think I've caught every single thing we've mentioned.
in the show notes. And then we also have upcoming NCompass Live episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Yeah, I will. And thank you so much, Jamie, for being with us today. We really, you're unmuted again. Sorry. We appreciated having you. It was a great talk. The whole session has been recorded, so it will be available for anyone who wants to listen to it again who wasn't able to join us today. That mind map that you had there, Jamie, I've downloaded it, and if you don't mind, I'm going to post it up on our website along with the recording.
That's fine.
Cool. So that'll be there for everyone. And next week, we hope you'll join us when, if you want to go click on where we're going to be talking about digital humanities in libraries. Well, I'm not going to be talking about it. We have Karen Dalziel and Elizabeth Loring, who is from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, their Center for Digital Research in the Humanities, and they're going to talk about what the heck is digital humanities and what it has to do with libraries. Right. And please note, all that red text, normally NCompass Live is on Wednesdays. Next Wednesday is the 4th of July. We are closed. The Nebraska Library Commission is closed for the holiday, so we are doing it on Tuesday morning.
Didn't want to do it from home?
No.
Okay.
I'm going to be setting off fireworks and barbecuing or something. So NCompass Live next week will be Tuesday morning, same time, but just on Tuesday instead of Wednesday. So please be aware of that. It's all over on the stuff, and hopefully everyone will remember and show up then. So sign up and join us for that next week. So thank you very much, Jamie.
Thank you.
And I think we are, no more questions or last minute comments. We are good to go.
All right.
Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next week.